Good afternoon. My name is Judith Raming and I need to wait. Okay, good afternoon again. Thank you for coming to our fourth Marine Park Platform meeting. My name is Judith Raming and I'm working as manager of the Bonaire National Marine Park. Today my contribution will be very short, but I will be here to answer questions because our conservation director, Callie de Meijer, she is going to do most of the presenting today, and we will also get help from our senior conservation manager, Roxanne Francisca, for the part that's about Skiddle-Dee. Today, what we want to do is we want to reflect back to what has happened in, let me see if I already changed the, the topics to discuss today are actually that we want to give an update about the current situation of SASUM. We want to talk about the oil spill that we dealt with. Of course, we're also going to look at the feedback given in the last meeting, the last Marine Park Platform meeting that we have had. We will look at the year 2023. What did we do? And basically, what's the result of the work? We will also look at the marine park capacity. So with whom are we working? What are we also planning to do with that capacity in 2024? So here you have the topics of today. And first, other way. First of all, it's SASUM update. At the moment, we see that every year we have to deal with SASUM, and at the moment we see the first landings of SASUM coming in. The amounts of SASUM that we're currently dealing with aren't very high yet, but we do expect more SASUM is coming towards our island of Bonaire. We see it floating around at the coast, and if we have SASUM, we basically always know that it goes to Lagoon, Washikemba, then to Lock Bay, and then we have it further up south. What Stinapa does is we keep people informed. So basically, every direct stakeholder who is operating in one of the bays where we see SASUM, we will inform them directly about what we're seeing based on the satellite images that Stinapa has. For now, we are very able to clean it up, but of course, if we are going to have more, it can be that it takes us longer to clean up the SASUM, but for now it's very manageable. What we also see with the SASUM is that it is mixed with oil. So that was to be expected because last week we were riddled a little bit with an oil spill. Oil came out of a ship at Trinidad and Tobago. Basically, it was in the sea, and we expected the oil to come towards Bonaire as well. Together with the harbor master, also together with our local government, we really looked at the oil and where the oil was heading to. Looking at those images, because we had help from the Coast Guard, we had people sailing through water in the first 5 kilometers of Bonaire to look if they saw oil. Based on the oil spill that we saw, we didn't expect landings until not last week Thursday, but the week before the Thursday. They said, okay, start preparations for a potential oil spill. We always have to be very cautious with information sharing because we never know when it's exactly going to land on Bonaire. We thought it would be in the weekend, but unfortunately we were quite surprised to have it still on Monday, because in the weekend it looked that it disappeared. And what happened is that the oil actually went underwater, and that's why we didn't have a good vision over the oil anymore. So what did our team do? We had placed the oil booms that we have gotten from the harbor office in the water to, as much as possible, extract the oil at desired places. Unfortunately, we also had oil at Sorbonne, and that was kind of a surprise because we expected it to come more north. The channels of the mangroves were closed. No oil has been in the mangroves, and the cleanup started very rapidly. So we started cleaning up at Sorbonne, we started cleaning up at Punta de Calbas, at Foodies, and also at Lagoon. Lagoon a little bit later, because if you talk about nature values, in Lock Bay you have an instant threat, and at Lagoon we were able to keep the oil at front so that it didn't go to the backland. It never came into the backlands. Our team at some moment has asked for assistance because we couldn't do it alone. And also with working with volunteers, we were working very spread out. We had to go to different areas, and we didn't have all the measurements, all the personal safety measurements needed for larger groups of volunteers. So we have asked the military to help us because they bring their own equipment. And together with the military, we were able to take most of the oil out within 5 days. So basically, first oil on Monday, and on Friday, most of the oil was out. You will still see oil. You will see oil at the areas of Marcultura, Baby Beach. We did our best. We took out all the oil puddles, but if you look at the rocks, you will see parts of oil there, and that will deteriorate with the energy of the sea itself. We cannot get that off the stones. The only thing we could do, and partially we did, was relocating stones to have them more in the wave energy in that area to deteriorate, so that the oil would deteriorate quicker. For now, there's still threat of oil. We cannot say that the threat is away because we still have a boat. The boat is at the moment not or very limited leaking oil, but that boat isn't salvaged yet. So basically the boat is still in the water. So it is still something that we need to really look closely at, how this is going to develop. For now, as expected, we do see the oil within the sargassum, and our team takes that out with a certain precaution, and we're also bringing that to the landfill, and the landfill is going to make sure that that is being treated as hazardous waste. Yes. Are there any, are there questions about this situation? Is anybody having a need of more information? No? Then I'm going to give the microphone to Kali.
Thank you. Okay. It's good to see so many familiar faces back in the room for our 4th platform meeting. It's good to see some new faces here as well. Judith has already introduced the topics that we're going to cover this afternoon. I would like to add that this is really your meeting. So if you have questions or you have concerns as we're going through this, please just shoot a hand up or shout out. This is really all about us bringing information back to you, and this is supposed to be interactive. It's also going to be a little bit of an adventure. You've already heard about some of our adventures over the last couple of weeks with the oil spill. That's taken up a tremendous amount of time and effort within the organisation. And we haven't had a chance to review this presentation before showing it to you. So if we have little glitchy bits, I know it's a mistake to apologise up front, but just go with the flow, and we beg your indulgence. There are all sorts of things that were going on last year, of course. Just before I start to dig into some of the achievements, some of the highlights of last year, that it's not supposed to be comprehensive. I mean, we're really giving you a kind of a snapshot of some of the different things that the Marine Park and Stinapa were working on. There's a whole lot more in the background that you can't see immediately. And I think the other point that I want to make before we start really digging into the highlights from last year is that an awful lot of the work that Stinapa and that the Marine Park does is in collaboration. We work together, we work cooperatively with other NGOs on the island, with businesses, with individuals. So we're by no means standing up here today and saying, this is what Stinapa or this is what the Marine Park did last year. We're doing it in combination and in coordination with a lot of other people and a lot of other organisations. So just to kick off, this is an overview of the feedback that we got from you all actually at the last platform meeting. And one of the things that we promised you early on in 2023 was, each time we come back to you, we wanted to go back and review what we heard you tell us in the previous meeting and tell you where we're at. So one of the points that came up was how to enforce rules for unregulated dive operations, Airbnbs and things like that. I have to say we're still looking into that. There's no easy solve for smaller businesses, which are really difficult for us to interact with, to work with on a regular basis. There was a note that the requirement to use SMBs as surface marker buoys. So in fact, legally, whenever you get in the water to dive, you should be carrying an SMB with you. That is not being enforced, but it is on the statute books. The foiling ban in Luck, we stated that that would be addressed through the rezoning of Luck, which has been going on for a year now. In terms of the rezoning of Luck, we've got a little bit of bad news for you. And the little bit of bad news is that we have been told by government that we do not have the authority to continue with the rezoning at Luck. So we were within moments of presenting you with the final picture. We had about 95% positive feedback from stakeholders, from you all. We ran 7 stakeholder meetings last year, 2 of them in Papiamento. We talked to everyone and everyone. We had an online survey and we had over 250 respondents, but apparently we need to slow down with the results. So that's not gonna happen right now. This water safety ordinance was a big topic of debate last time, and the magic telephone number is right there. If you have not written it down already, 715-8000. If you see anything which has to do with safety on the water, that is the number that you need to call. So if you haven't got it, take a snapshot, write it down. Anything to do with the water safety ordinance is the responsibility of the Harbour Office, and that's the number that you need to call to report. Nature permits and the nature fee. When we spoke to you last on the 1st of January, we were supposed to be collecting fees from cruise boat passengers that were using the marine park. And this had been a very controversial topic for a very long while. I remember that there was a lot of support in the room last time for the fact that the fee would finally be collected. It's not strictly a cruise boat fee, it's actually an overnight fee or a one-day pass. So for someone who's here just on a very short stay and they're using the marine park, the law said that as of the 1st of January, we should be collecting a $10 fee from them. But that has also been postponed by government. So we don't know at this time when that's going to be picked up again. This government has publicly stated and very clearly stated to us, it is their intent to take the nature fee, which is the funding that everybody that uses the marine park pays, that comes to Stinapa and which pays our overhead costs and pays for all of the work that we do, both in the marine park and in the Washington Slough Bay Park, and all of the support services that we provide. This government has said that it is their stated intent to merge the nature fee with the tourism tax. Their reason for wanting to do that is the confusion that it causes amongst people coming to the island, that they have to pay a tourism tax, which in fact replaces the room tax, the restaurant tax, the car hire tax, and the nature fee, which is the admission fee, which gets you admission to the marine park and to the Washington Park. So this is something which Oil Bay is looking into right now. And the commercial operator nature permits we talked about as well is also income that should come back to the marine park from anyone that's running a business in the marine park. And at this time, that is not implementable. We're not able to implement that because the permitting system is not in place to support it. So in terms of income generation, things aren't looking quite so rosy for us at the moment. In terms of outreach and information, we talked about the Reef Ranger course, and we talked about the need to promote that a little more and provide more communication and outreach. I think that you can probably tell better than us whether we hit the spot with that. Did we? Are people now aware of the Reef Ranger course? Everyone's looking a bit blank. So maybe not. Okay, we won't immediately take that off the list, guys. In terms of safe access to the water, one of the things that the Marine Park has been committed to for a long while now is providing disabled access in front of the Parque Tului in town. And that is happening as we speak. So it is really in process and happening now. And the public mooring reservation system, which we know is also a hot potato and a kind of interesting and somewhat controversial topic, is something which is also in process right now. We haven't got any new news for you, but we are certainly still looking at it and working on it. Does anyone have any questions about the feedback? Yeah, Susan.
What have they decided to do about the cost of the mooring? Excuse me. What have they decided to do as far as the cost of the mooring per night? Is that going to stay?
This is about the overnight moorings and the charge for the overnight moorings. There is no change at this time. It will continue as is.
$35 per night. Yes. And for private mooring, the costs are $1,000 per year. Public moorings, of course, are free of use.
I don't want to get it wrong. Are there any other questions? Anything else on the feedback from the last meeting? Oh, there we go. You see, I told you there was some glitches in here. This was the last slide of the oil. So having seen all the gooky pictures of the oil, this is actually what it looks like right now. And just to emphasize, actually this week, there is still a warning in place that says that people should not be getting into the water over at Luck. That's because there's still the possibility of oil coming in, and we want to make sure that any residual oil in the bay has flushed out before people are in there enjoying all the water sports over there. So if you get into the water at the moment, it's at your own risk. And the advice from the government is that you don't get into the water over at Luck this week. We expect them to lift the ban next week, correct?
Yeah, let me add one thing to that. Basically, what we still are having is that the oil is in the water system at the moment. And for the oil to go out of the water system, that takes at least 2 weeks, preferably more like 3 weeks, but at least after 2 weeks. So this Monday, it's 2 weeks ago that we had the oil spill landings. That's why we're also stating, like, if you want to swim at Lock Bay, do that starting Monday.
There we go. Okay, so once again, emphasizing this is not us on our own. This is us working collaboratively and cooperatively with a whole bunch of other people. But one of the highlights, if you like, for us at least last year was this project, the Luck Pasempa project. This is being funded with funding from the European Union, from Resembid. We have all sorts of cool stuff that we've been able to do over at Luck as a result of that funding. We have a project manager that's working on this. We have 2 rangers that are stationed over at Luck every day. You may not see them every day. Luck is a very big bay, but they are over there every day. We have a brand new boat. This is not the new boat, but we have a new boat to patrol the bay. We have watchtowers. There's a watchtower up at Surabong. There's a watchtower also over at Luck Kai. We have a coral nursery that was set up with reef renewal. We have 10 coral trees there. We have a seagrass restoration project, which is happening in the bay. That's with Stony and Ternos. We have fecal bacteria monitoring for anyone that's interested in water quality. And we had the rezoning plan until the rezoning plan was put on the back burner. Does anyone have any questions about what we've been doing in Luck? Okay. One of the other things that we did last year, which I hope everybody saw, is this, Marine Park Informs. So there's a whole bunch of videos out there now. You told us and we heard you that there was not enough outreach, especially about rules and regulations. We now have videos on moorings, on boating, on diving, on the no fishing zones. There was a lot of time and effort put out into developing these short videos and distributing them via social media. So we hope that that's been able to solve some of the questions about, I'm struggling, I'm so sorry, about what the rules and regulations are. In terms of Clyne Bonaire, both Luck and Clyne Bonaire are Ramsar sites. So not only are they in a national park, but they're also protected areas because they are wetlands of global significance. Therefore, they have our attention. With Clyne Bonaire, we put in 3 new walking trails. That was done with Boy Antoine. The signage was awesome and fantastic until it rained. And then we discovered that the plants got ahead of us. So when it gets a bit drier again, you'll probably find the trails just fine. But we had a couple of people that got a little lost. We need to go back and revisit the trails and revisit the signage. It's a work in progress. But as an extension of the kind of things you can do when you go to climb, the trails are there. As always, the Marine Park Rangers collect trash from Klein on a very regular basis. We've got 6 bins over there. They're emptied twice a week and they're always full. The maintenance of the cabanas and the picnic areas was one of the things that was done last year. Else Marie is busy with her subal palm project. So we have subal palms being planted in the back area of over there. And hopefully in a few years' time, we will have a subal palm forest. She is aiming to plant 1,000 trees. So if anyone has a burning desire to either go and plant a subal palm or help her to water them and keep them clean, she goes over twice a week, and she's always looking for volunteers. She has over 590 volunteers that have helped her with that project. Okay. Yes.
She goes twice a week.
Else Marie goes over on Wednesday and Sunday. She goes.
Basically, if you want to contact her, you can always contact Stinapa and we will provide you with the contact details. But she also has an email address. I don't know if she wants me to share it here out loud, but if you want the email address, just contact us and we will make sure that you get it. Yeah, also she has a telephone number to contact, but I don't remember that out of the top of my head. Yeah.
If you're interested, just get in touch and we'll make sure that we put you with Else Marie and you can go and do great reforestation work on Klein Bonaire. This is another one of the projects that kick-started last year, which is really interesting. This is a big collaboration. This is Reefs. They've got some funding from WWF. They're working in partnership with WWF, with Rotterdam Zoo and also with Piscabon. This is a really interesting project because at the moment we actually know quite a lot about corals, when they're reproducing, how they're reproducing, etc., and we know next to nothing about fish. And this project aims to close that gap. So what they're doing is they're collecting fish eggs and they're studying the early life stages. If you haven't seen the presentations that this guy gives, go, because they are fantastic. He's got pictures of little baby fish hatching out of eggs that have never been photographed before. And they're recording all of these details. They're creating a database of fish DNA. Imagine that. They're looking for breeding locations and they're mapping where the different species are breeding. So they've already found what they call fish hubs. And they're at Bachelor's Beach, at Pink Beach and at Red Slave. And this is really cutting edge work and it is fascinating. So hopefully what we already have now for corals, where you can look at the year and you can see when they're most likely to be spawning, is the kind of information that in a few years' time we'll also have for fish populations around the island. Wildly interesting. Rotterdam Zoo is in the process actually of setting up their own wet lab here, and they are turning Bonaire into their Caribbean hub. So as of May, I think.
Yeah, it's somewhere in the middle of this year. They are really planning on starting to work more on Bonaire. They're also going to have a contact person on Bonaire and see how they can facilitate ongoing projects, but also set out projects with the nature organizations broader than Stinapa alone. But I leave that to you.
Thank you. So another project to keep your eye on. This started last year, but it will be continuing, and it is a very interesting project to keep an eye on. The Conch project is another collaboration. This is another one with a strong interest from with WWF. Do you want to fill in the gaps on this one? Yes.
Of course. Basically, we are working together with WWF, Piscabon, but also FCUP from Curacao, in a project about Carco. Because if you look at the Carco, it's really a distinctive animal that's from this region. You only find it in the Caribbean region, and that makes that we also think it's important to work together with our fishermen to see how we can make sure that the conch has a sustainable lifespan and also the possibility of procreating within Loch Bay, because Loch Bay is mainly also used to procreate by the conch. First, we had a tryout, a pilot project to see if cultivated conch can live in the wild in Spanish waters at Curacao. And this year we brought conch in to also see if that is still happening within Loch Bay. We had placed the conch actually just a week or 2 weeks before the oil landings. So it was kind of interesting to see what would happen with those oil landings. But we can tell you that for now, all the conch survived and they're still alive and kicking. And what we're actually doing is seeing how they move around in the bay to get more knowledge about how they find each other, where they're going, what do they need to have a sheltered life. They like to sit in seagrass and eat parts of seagrass. Actually, they're great vacuums. They clean a lot of things on the seagrass. So we try to get more of an insight there to also see how we can make sure that this very distinctive animal has also a chance of survival in the region.
And then there's a whole lot of science going on. But before I do that, there's actually a really nice end of story bit to the conch coming over from Curacao to Bonaire. And that was, we had an old set of drilling equipment that wasn't being used anymore by the marine park. It's the equipment that's used to put those helix moorings in the reef that you see. We've been using it forever and ever, and it all still worked, but Marine Park has been able to replace it in the meantime. And with the boat that brought the conch over, we were able to get the same boat to take the drilling equipment back to Curacao so that Kamabi now also can start installing moorings on their reefs over there. So it's a kind of a nice end of story there. In terms of science, this isn't all of the science that we're doing. This is just a kind of a potpourri for you. There's lionfish monitoring. I'm going to come to that in just a second. Bleaching monitoring, water quality monitoring. The water quality monitoring is something that Stinapa is working with the University of Wageningen and the Ministry of LMV to try and get a handle on what the water quality is like around the island. And there's a whole report on reef health trends by Professor Bob Stenek. The lionfish story is here. So you probably already know that we have dedicated lionfish hunters. They use a specially modified spear gun called an ELF to go out and hunt lionfish on the reef. It's a kind of a pole spear. In the meantime, and an interesting part of this story is that the lionfish meat is actually rather valuable. So filleted lionfish goes for about $50 a kilo, making it a rather valuable target species. That's both good and bad because, in fact, when we talk about lionfish control, we're really talking about taking lionfish off the reef, no matter how large the lionfish are. But if you're doing this for commercial gain, of course, you actually want them to stay on the reef to get as big as possible and shoot them when they're big, because you're going to get a lot more money for the meat. So there's kind of an edge to the whole taking lionfish off the reef story right now. We have monitoring that is ongoing. Every couple of years, we have another complete survey that's been going on for 12 years. We saw increased density. Let me show you here. We have a lionfish derby, you know about that. We have a lionfish control program. But what's interesting is this right here. So what it looks as though we're seeing is, this was the low point here around 2016, 2017, but we're actually seeing the numbers of lionfish on the reef go up slightly. And
yes, so if we look at the numbers, what we're basically calculating is the density of lionfish on the reef. And what we've noticed very curiously was in 2021, the numbers started to go up. Now, we all also know what happened in 2020. So what we think is happening is that this increase in lionfish density might be driven by the decreased demand that we had when the island was basically shut down. So, of course, we're going to continue monitoring. And when we separate the numbers out a little bit more, it looks like the increase is driven not in the no fishing zone, so not in the areas that are more difficult to access, but the density is actually going up in the fished areas. So definitely what I would say is go out and hunt more lionfish.
So In fact, anyone that doesn't fancy going and planting subar palms, we've got another job for you. You can go out and kill some lionfish for us. Could I have the next? In terms of bleaching, this unfortunately is not the best story. Last year, 2023, saw the worst bleaching event in the Caribbean pretty much to date. The bleaching event Caribbean-wide was in fact so bad that NOAA, which is the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric guys in the US, thank you, actually had to reset the way that they record bleaching because it was so intense and it was so long. In that sense, we were actually rather lucky. The Windward Islands had the bleaching event much longer and much more intensely than we did. Here, it started later in the year, but about 80% of the coral reef was bleached. It was first detected in October. It was still going on in January. That's not really very good news. A bleached coral is not dead. What happens is the heat stress causes them to throw out their coloration, which is a zooxanthellae. It's little teeny tiny plankton that live in the body of the coral. But what they have is a symbiotic relationship with the coral. So when they have their nice green color or yellow, orange, mustardy color, they've got these teeny tiny symbiotic algae in their tissues, but they also get nutrition. They actually get food from the plankton in their tissues. When they throw them out, what starts to happen is they start to starve. So this was not a good event. The elevated sea temperatures continued into this year and the recovery is starting now. The only teeny tiny piece of good news, and it is only a tiny piece of good news, is stony coral tissue loss disease seems to go into remission when there's a bleaching event. That's not just here on Bonaire, it's something that's been seen Caribbean-wide. So there was less impact from the stony coral tissue loss disease, but we had this monstrous bleaching event happening. Okay, this one is particularly difficult to read. I did warn you this was going to be a little bit of a roller coaster.
Okay, so basically what it says is that if we look at sargassum, we have had investments from our Ministry of LNV and OLB into purchasing heavy equipment to make us better equipped to combat sargassum. In 22, we received the financial contribution and we made sure that we had the heavy equipment before the sargassum season started in 23. Basically, if you look at 22, that happened with a reason. Because in 22, we had a very, very heavy sargassum year. There was a lot of sargassum. We really couldn't handle it. We had the team for 51 days cleaning up with only rakes and pitchforks. So we're very, very happy that we have gotten this investment to also make our sargassum work more effective. Basically, last year, we were still very busy with sargassum, but people didn't notice it so much because we had that heavy equipment that we could use. And basically, our team was still cleaning up 29 days, but we weren't smelling the sargassum because the sargassum was taken out in time. Basically, we can say that in 29, we cleaned up around between like 60 and like a 90% of the sargassum that washed up, mainly at Lagoon and Lock Bay. And that was also because of that investment, because we were able to make a more solid sargassum plan and organize the cleanups better. What we expect this year is actually, and that's kind of like, let's hope that that's the case. This year we expect a year as we had in 23. So we do not expect the year of 22 because I'm giving you great numbers, but that's also because the influxes were lower. If we're getting higher influxes of sargassum, we still need to test out the effectivity of that heavy machinery use because it also depends, of course, on the volume of sargassum that you take in after a night or after a day. So we still need to see, like, how much is this investment helping with our cleanup plan? We know that in 22, we had a huge amount of sargassums. We took out approximately 5%. It was huge, but it's like in percentages, very little. Last year, we had like lower volumes of sargassum. We took out, at least 60, 70% of the sargassum, mostly like 80, 90%. So we're still looking at, okay, Is this working? We can say it is working, but yeah, we're expecting a good sargassum year. We never know because we always have to monitor, but know that this is in progress.
All right, I'm back up. So other exciting things that happened last year, of course, was in March of 2023, we had the first detection of stony coral tissue loss disease. Since the disease was detected here on Bonaire, we have continued to monitor. We are trying to stay ahead of not just the disease, but as well the, what do you call those? What is happening in the region, what other areas, other islands are doing to combat the disease. So initially we had set up the disinfection protocols, and these were all in alignment with what was recommended by NOAA, by AGRA, by various other organizations here in the region. We had the stoplight system that we set up with the online map so everybody could track the spread of the disease here on Bonaire. And we also have a Skittle the action plan that we drafted actually in 2022 and then continue to adapt as the disease outbreak was progressing. So what's changed since our last meeting is we've received funding from Bloomberg Philanthropies to assist us in the combating the stony coral tissue loss disease. We have, in the meantime, hired a stony coral tissue loss disease coordinator. Her name is Shanine Toy. Some of you might also know her already. She's also a dive instructor. And this weekend, we are setting up the first volunteer training workshops. So what we're going to do with these workshops is train people to help us treat specific coral colonies in an effort to help keep them alive. If you can give me the, yes. So as you can see, the majority of the leeward coast is currently affected. We have stony coral tissue loss disease, basically all over the island, the leeward coast, all over Klein Bonaire. The East Coast is not presented on this map as well, mostly because we don't have any official dive sites anymore on the East Coast, but also because we don't have a very good grip on where sargassum is on the East Coast. It's harder to monitor, it's harder to dive, so we don't get to go out there as frequently, but we do know that the stony coral tissue loss disease is also present on the East Coast at various locations. So one of the first sites where we detected the disease back in March and April of 2023 was the dive site Calabas, and this is a dive site that's close to the town pier. At Calabas, the disease prevalence, oh, that doesn't sound good. Normally on a reef, background disease levels are about 2 to 3%. So that's just like the general human population as well. No, we can't, there's always some people that are a little bit sick. What we saw at Calabas was that at the height of the disease, it peaked at 40%. So that means 4 out of every 10 corals that were alive had signs of disease, be it stony coral tissue loss disease, which was the majority of them, or some other kind of disease. Now, almost a year later at Calabas, the disease prevalence has gone back down, and now we're at 9%. Now, that means that for Bonaire, we are slowly moving out of the outbreak phase of the disease, and we're moving into the phase where it becomes epidemic. So stony coral tissue loss disease most likely is here to stay. It's not going to go away, and we just have to adapt. I'm going to borrow lots of words from COVID, but we're adapting to the new normal. At this particular dive site, the impact of the disease was that we lost 46% of the colonies. So out of 100 colonies on this reef, corals on the reef, 46% of them died. Now, this was not equally spread over all of the coral species. Some species were hit a lot harder than other species. So what we did here was we basically grouped corals into functional groups. And you can see that between March of 2023 and March of 2024, we have lost basically all of the brain corals. So this doesn't mean there are 0 brain corals on the reef. It means that when we are monitoring, I don't find any live ones in my transects. We've also lost all of the flower corals, and the star corals have also been quite affected. They seem to survive a little bit longer, but they're also getting hit quite hard with the disease. That also means that these are the coral functional groups that we're focusing our treatment on. And the treatment is not to save every coral colony, it is to keep colonies alive so that they can keep reproducing. If we lose all of our brain corals, there's nothing, we can't even do any reef restoration because we have nothing to start with. So when we're doing the treatments as well, this is the focus. keep them alive for as long as we can. We had, of course, hoped that we would see some signs of resistance in the coral populations here on Bonaire. And for this specific site, as well as Bachelor's Beach and Te Amo Beach, I haven't seen that yet. Now, that doesn't mean there is none. If we look hard enough, we might probably find a couple of colonies that are resistant, but it's not as many as we had hoped there would be. So definitely these species will need our help if they're ever able to recover. We will not go into too much detail during this presentation on stony coral tissue loss disease, but we will have another public meeting, and this will be in April. Everybody's invited. We'll send invitations, and then we will go into a little bit more detail about how this disease has affected the reef and what are the changes we're seeing. Oh, so what does that look like on the reef? So sorry. In the beginning, at the height of the outbreak, everybody could see it, right? The corals were turning white. It's very visible. It's very clear. But what happens in the long run is things get overgrown by algae. So here we have a couple of coral species, and it's basically like what did it look like when it was alive or when it still was affected? What does it look like now that we're maybe a couple of months later after the colony has died? So this is what's going to happen on most places of the reef is the color goes away and algae starts growing on there. And in the long run, we're going to lose these structures. So they're going to be eroded by either fish nibbling at the algae, by the current, by the wave movement. And these are gone. So once the coral is dead and algae is growing on it, it's not going to come back. There's nothing we can do to get this colony back, but hopefully with all the efforts that we're all putting in to combat stony coral tissue loss disease, we will get the next generation of ring corals and star corals. All right.
Okay, on a happier note, because I do think we need a happier note at the moment, there was a royal visit, and the royal visit went across really well. King, Queen, and the Crown Princess were here. They visited the mangroves. They interacted with the junior rangers. There was a photo exhibition. It was really good promo for the work, for the island. Have another slide. Thank you. Okay, so this is another one of our little oopsies. This was actually supposed to be all the way back at the beginning of the presentation. I did warn you this will be a wild ride this afternoon. And it's just to emphasize for you what the marine park really is. The marine park is the manager, Judith. She has an assistant manager, Lyle. She has a chief ranger, Dean. There are 12 rangers that work with the marine park. And of those 12 rangers, we have 2 of them stationed over at Luck all of the time. We have a whole bunch of volunteers and we have interns. But this is all we have to manage 2,700 hectares of coral reef, seagrass and mangrove all the way around the island, just to put things in perspective. These were some of the incidents. They're not all of the incidents, but these were some of the incidents from last year. Tourists that needed to be rescued from the trails when they couldn't find their way. We promised to improve the signage. There was a Curaçaoan boat was towed in when it got into trouble. There was a diesel truck that overturned at Kapata and was leaking diesel. There was a Curaçaoan fishing boat that ended up on the reef in front of Luck that took 6 days of effort to get the boat off. It was full, so the fuel had to be offloaded as well, and the fuel entrance was so small that you couldn't get a proper hose through it. So this was a whole big drama, and this was also something where we worked really closely with Piscawam and the fishermen to help get this boat off the reef. This was a success story. The boat left, it's gone back to Curaçao, right?
Yes, the boat left and it went back to Curaçao. And we're very happy that we also got a lot of support from our fishermen from Piscabon locally, but also from Curaçao. And I think it's good to say that everything is about collaboration. And what we see is that also Piscabon now working with FCOP, so fishermen working united, that's also helping tremendously to deal with these incidents. And we really thank them for their help. Of course, it's important to know that if you talk about incidents, basically we have an incident every month because every month a boat is sinking and Stinapa is helping, or a boat is in engine problems, or something is happening on sea. So for our team, it's always incident-based work we always have to deal with that, because you never know when something happens and when our team is going to assist.
So, another change of subject and looking at law enforcement now, because I know this is one that's always close to people's hearts. 640 verbal warnings last year. 209 of them, I must say, had to do with the temporary closure of access to Clyne Bonaire. So, yeah, not terribly high compliance with the closure. And it was the closure of Clyne Bonaire, also the north of the island. The Washington Park is still closed, as you know, because that's one of the places that we really want to focus on trying to get ahead of stony coral tissue loss disease, getting as many corals as we can to survive for as long as we can so that they're reproducing. In terms of water sports, kite and windsurfing outside of the designated areas was another biggie. Diving with gloves happened. 13 incidents involving building. Can I have the next one? This is actually, so of that 600 plus, this is the breakdown. And you can see that there was an awful lot of enforcement effort went into that partial closure of Clyne Bonaire. Unfortunately, we missed. The good news is we were able to slow down the spread of stony coral tissue loss disease, but we weren't able to prevent stony coral tissue loss disease from arriving on Clyne and spreading throughout. But that gives you a complete overview and a breakdown of all of the enforcement activity last year. I have absolutely no idea why we have this in our slideshow. Okay, but looking at some of the challenges, so having looked back over the whole year, some of the challenges have to do with income generation. I mentioned it already. The potential loss of the nature fee would be a huge blow because that's the money that we rely on to do all of the work that we do with Stinapa. The loss of the day visitor fee was a blow because we had anticipated collecting that, and that at the last minute really didn't happen. Our inability to collect the commercial operator permits. In terms of staffing, one of the things that we see is really high staff turnover and the need for a lot of training and a lot of team building to keep everything up to par. And we really urgently need to replace one of the patrol boats. We have a patrol boat which is becoming more of a liability than it is an asset. And that, of course, is also huge heading into the next year. And this is just a snapshot for you of where we will be focusing in 2024. Stony coral tissue loss disease is top of the list. Of course, it's top of the list. At the moment, we're still in a place where we're trying to mobilize as much support as we can so that we can treat as many sick corals as we can, maybe not to cure them, but to keep them alive long enough so that they're reproducing. We're also forward thinking. There's an awful lot of thought now going into what comes next and what steps we can take now so that we can start to repopulate the reef with corals once the first wave is over. Climate change resilience is another really big topic. Do we have a handle on this? No, not really. But we have a dedicated staff person who's starting with us within the month to focus exactly on this topic. We have the LACPA SEMPA project, which should have been coming to a close, but is kind of on ice now because we had this whole elaborate outreach campaign planned to roll out with the new rezoning, and we're having to wait a little before we can do that. We're also asking for a project extension, so we're hopeful that we'll be able to continue with this. The water quality monitoring is ongoing. Actually, the work that we're doing right now with the University of Wageningen is coming to an end, but Rijkswaterstaat in the Netherlands has an interest in water quality monitoring, so we're going to be working with them. We have the Conch project with those cute little guys over in Luck. We have a focus on moorings and mooring use. This is huge. And a focus on Clyne Bonaire. So the beginning of this year is really all about luck. And then as we move to the middle of the year and the end of the year, we're going to start to refocus more and more attention on Clyne Bonaire and completing that disabled ramp at the Parque Tului. We're going to have a really big party when we have the disabled ramp completed at Parque Tului. Okay, so we have a few upcoming meetings for you. We have in April a Stony coral tissue loss disease meeting coming up. On the 10th of April, we have a meeting with Bonhata, which is all about moorings, the use of moorings, the regulation of moorings, the permitting of moorings. The 6th of June will be our next Marine Park platform meeting. Do we have a topic for the next one?
Yes, we're thinking to do it about fisheries because we have gotten a lot of people asking questions like, what about fisheries? How's that regulated? So that's our idea. But if you think you have a way better topic, let us know because we can also always change it or use your topic for the next Marine Park platform meeting in October.
So there's your challenge. It's out there. If there's a burningly hot topic, we're absolutely happy to pick it up. Otherwise, our focus is going to be on fisheries at the next meeting. And then we have an October 3rd meeting planned as well. Okay, that's it, guys. It's really over to you. Do we have any questions?
This is a question in regards to the elf and the lionfish. I understand you only have a certain amount of those elves that you're giving people, and there's quite a waiting list. Is it possible to get more?
At the moment, we don't have a big waiting list. We have elf in stock. But what we are looking at is that we see that commercially, people are asking for more and more elf. And we're looking at how to regulate this. Because yes, stock is always a thing because we have to order the parts from abroad and then assemble it here because we cannot get an elf as a weapon through customs. So it's always difficult for us to maintain stock. But at the moment, and for like the last half year, we have had the elf in stock. So yeah, that's the answer to the question.
Does anyone have any other questions for us? It's open season, guys.
How are you guys going to survive financially?
That's an excellent question. If we had the answer to that, and at the moment, there is no change happening right now. So at the moment, the nature fee is still coming to Stinapa. When that changes, we're going to have to roll with it. I think that the focus for us right now is to make our good friends best friends and to make our friends good friends, to really build support around us for the work that we're doing. That's both here on the island and also abroad. There's a lot of appreciation for Stinapa and there's a lot of appreciation for the Marine Park. We know that. We are at the moment really hunkering down, but we're not inactive. So one of the things that we've been doing is recognizing that, for example, we're not able to collect all of the nature fees with the system as it stands right now. And we have a rather interesting metric because when people go into the Washington Park, if they paid their nature fee, they don't have to pay. But we can see from the number of people that go to the Washington Park, approximately what percentage of tourists are coming through the island that aren't paying when they arrive, because most people don't go to the Washington Park on their first day or their second day. They go halfway through the week or at the end of their stay. So our numbers indicate that we have about 15% of people that at the moment are not paying the nature fee. That's got the focus of our attention. In fact, with any system like this, you don't really ever expect to collect 100%, but you should be able to collect 90%. So we've got at least 5% or maybe a little more there. And we have a whole campaign where we're working with the Tourism Corporation Bonaire to get much more activity at the airport when people are arriving so that they can get information that says, yes, there's a tourism tax, but there's also a nature fee that needs to be paid. We've got cute little souvenir items that we're going to put QR codes on. We've got brochures that we've got ready to roll out to really maximize the income that we can now. And of course, we're out after all the kind of private support, for example, through donations, project support by applying for grants. So we're very active, we're on top of it, but it is absolutely a cause for concern. Yeah.
Hello. My question was because you talked about connecting the nature fee payment to the tourist tax payment. How sure is that happening? Because then you catch everybody.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, when it becomes a tax, everybody has to pay, and the government is much more adept than we are at collecting the fee. I think the problem in terms of merging the nature fee, which comes to Stinapa directly, with a tourism tax that goes to government, is that all of those funds will go to government. And in 30 plus years of conservation management experience in this part of the world, I have yet to see a government tax which is earmarked actually go where it's supposed to go. And that's just an observation based on 30 years of living and working here. So even when a tax is earmarked, it can be phenomenally difficult to actually make that earmarking happen. And we have friends and partners around us that are already struggling because of this, where they should be getting income from government, which really isn't materializing for them. So it is absolutely a cause for concern. Was there someone over here that I missed? Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Concerning the no fishing zones, are you also taking in account the marinas? Because we see more activities within the marinas from shore and the sea.
Yeah. If you look at the no fishing zones, basically it is stipulated in the rules and regulations where the areas are. And if you look, for example, at Plaza Marina is not within that no fishing zone. So that means that people can fish in the marina there. I also know that that sometimes causes challenges. If you talk about the challenges that it causes, of course, Stinapa is willing with a report to see what we can do, but also mainly those challenges also has to go to the harbor office, because the harbor office is connected with the harbors that we're having on Bonaire. So it's a very good question, but the answer is also, it really depends on the lines where the no fishing zones end.
Callie, this was in relation to the thing you were talking about before. Is there something that we can do to get them to tell them that we don't want them to separate or to combine the nature fee? And is there something we can do to support you guys with the OLB and stuff like that? When, I mean, I know they're giving you problems, but I don't know how anybody can do anything about it.
Actually, yes, you can. Yeah, you can. You can write to government and tell them.
Well, that's too vague for me. Do I write on the envelope to the government? I mean, literally, I want.
We can make this information available to you. What I can assure you is, if you write to the island government, they are required to respond. They don't like doing so, but they are required to respond. And the more people write on the same topic, the more uncomfortable they will be about having to respond, and the more of their and the more of their attention it will get. That is absolutely something that we can look at. We can definitely tell you where you have to write, who you have to write to, and we can, yeah. Yes. So
why you don't use that method a little bit more often?
why don't we use the method of petitioning government a little more often? In fact, the biggest answer to that question is that we try really hard to work cooperatively with government. This is our elected leaders. We want to work with them. The only time that we would step out of line ordinarily is if something is happening that we feel is really to the detriment of the island, or really to the detriment of the natural resources which Stinapa is there to protect. So in those cases, yes, we would step out, but it's something that needs to be used judiciously. If you use it too often, they will become deaf to it. But you, as citizens, always are able and empowered to write to your decision makers and tell them that you disagree with their policies, for example, or with something that they're doing. And this is their stated policy right now.
And a second part to that is, don't make it a form letter like we all used to do, where we get all the different dive shops and whatnots. We wanted people to get information out and sign, and people would send it back, and we'd print it. We'd print it for archives and everything else, and then they changed the procedure, and you couldn't do that anymore. So don't make it a typical form letter that you put on Stinapa. Huh? Don't let it be a form letter. Make it 3 sentences or less, but don't have them all look the same.
It doesn't need to be elaborate, but you can absolutely, as citizens, call attention to something when you disagree with it, and you should do so. And we can certainly share with you who you should send that to. Welcome. Yeah.
A couple months ago at the TCB meeting, we heard that the Stinapa fee and the tourist tax could not be combined because one is a fee and one is the tax. It's optional to pay. You can choose not to use the marine park. How is that now different?
It's not different yet. Do you want to answer this one, actually?
It's not different yet, but it also, if you look at what's going on at the moment government-wise, we hear a lot about the law of Wolbes, the law of Finbes, and so on and so on. And this also has to do with how that's detailed out in those laws. And those laws are going to be changed. And we all do not know what exactly is going to be changed in those laws. So actually, TCB informed you very correctly. That always has been the case, but it is something that if you look at the laws, it also is a process. It's not something that you're doing really simple or fastly, but at the moment that process is already in motion, and we still have to wait what the outcome of this process is.
I can just talk really loud.
You can.
You know, there used to be 50 moorings for transient boats, and now it seems like maybe there's half that many. Do you plan to put 50 moorings back again, or what is the plan?
We had 51 overnight moorings, so for boats that are visiting Bonaire. At the moment, we took 4 out, so we have 47 moorings still there. Why did we take those moorings out? It's also because we're preparing to look at mooring use and to see, because we also have a wait list for residents who want to use private moorings. At the moment, we still need to see as Stinapa what our management entails, because if you look at the mooring regulations, it is stated that officially, it's a task of government to assign moorings, but the government can mandate that to Stinapa, and then Stinapa has the management of the moorings itself. Because we saw a little bit of less use of those moorings, we took them out. But we don't say that we will not place them back. The only thing what we are saying is that we're also looking at balance between private moorings, overnight moorings, and also public moorings. And that's something that we want to discuss during the meeting with Bonhata, but I think it's also good to discuss that maybe a little bit broader, or again, in a marine park platform meeting.
Just to continue on that topic, those moorings were 100% full for decades when the fee was $10. Now the fee at $35 a night, there's an average of 11 boats on there. And I think that's a travesty. If you guys think it's easier for yourselves and get about the same amount of money, we're losing a lot all over the island.
Thank you for that feedback given. Basically, we already said that this is something to look at. So we are willing to look at how to continue with the moorings. But at the moment, also in connection with what we stated earlier, we also need management-wise, we need to know how we can move forward with those moorings. And at the moment, we're a little bit stuck there. So we're still investigating, and we will elaborate on that more in the next meeting.
Would there also be a representative of the government present during that meeting? Last time I think we all had the question if one could answer more questions. Yeah.
The thing is, we always invite representatives from government. So we always do that. And of course, they're most welcome to join to every meeting that Stinapa is organizing. So yes, they are welcome to join. Well, the thing is that if you, it varies by topic, but at the moment we're not there yet. It's something that we can discuss. But as a speaker, we have never had that set up until now. So if you look at the whole vaccination process, what we did is we discussed it with government first, and then we started with the stakeholder meetings. Government was in the stakeholder meetings, but not speaking in those meetings. And that is something, of course, that we need to discuss, and that they also need to decide how they want to work with this. And for now, mostly we're doing the speaking and first negotiate with government how we want to move forward.
You said you're having a meeting with Bonhata, but what other stakeholders will you discuss this with?
So basically what we want to do is after the meeting with Bonhata, we will also see if we can integrate it in a marine park platform meeting. So we either going to integrate it maybe in the meeting of in June or in the meeting of October, because it also depends on us knowing how we can move forward. Like at the moment, we cannot fully move forward there. Yes, we have a court case going on, and we're waiting on the outcome of that court case. And then we can decide better how to move forward with the active management of the moorings itself. At the moment, the date is at the end of March, but actually, because it's a very complex matter, we do not anticipate a full verdict yet. So at the end of March, we know what we're heading for, but we might have a full verdict, but we do not know that for sure because of the complexity of the matter.
So before going public, and because Bonhata had a special outreach to us, they really particularly asked for us to come and talk with them about moorings and permitting and use and so on and so forth. We've agreed to that. So anyone that is either directly or indirectly a Bonhata member should hear about that meeting and should have an invitation, and that should include Cura and that should include WUB. But we're hesitating to talk publicly about something until we've really got clarity on the subject, because we don't want to confuse. And yeah, we've got a court case pending. Are there any other questions? Anyone? Is there anyone else?
Yeah, so basically what is stated here is connected to the topic that we just discussed about, like, we want to petition towards the government about what's going on with that tourism tax and the nature fee. And basically what Martin is saying out of Piscabon is, let's work together then. Maybe we can make one letter that is signed by a lot of people and bring that to government. Yeah, I think it might be a very good idea, but I also leave it up to you guys to see how you want to do that. Good suggestion. Thank you.
We certainly appreciate the support, absolutely. And our feeling is as well that if our partners are standing beside us in this, we're much stronger. That does not stop private individuals from also raising it with government, of course. But
the thing is that we all... Okay, thank you. The thing is, we all realize how important it is that the existence and the work Stinapa is doing. Even if sometimes we have encounters with Stinapa, it's still necessary. It's very important. So I think the best thing is to work together, put up this letter, and we all sign it. And I'm willing to address it to the government, to the gezaghebber, and I will personally bring it to him. If we all sign it, and I think it will have its impact.
I think so too. So thank you very much for offering. Yes.
I'm just going to shift back to the lock rezoning. As a person that's doing business there, it's hard to plan for the next season already. When you say it's on the back burner, the rezoning and the banning of foiling, how do we plan out so that we're not telling people to book their stay, to book their flights and stuff? It's a really difficult situation to be in. So I'm just curious, can you give a time frame what the back burner means? And also, if there was a rezoning that changed things that would change people coming here, what kind of time frame do we have to work with?
That's a very good question. Basically, to answer the first question, can I give a time frame of government coming back to us how to move forward? The answer is no, I cannot give you that because I don't know. If you look at what we were doing with the lock zonation, is actually saying about that whole foiling, that we also wanted to start up focused meetings with entrepreneurs and users to really talk about at lock and how to continue there. And we always took a year to do that. So if you're asking me like what's the implementation period, at least a year, but also depending on ongoing conversations, because it's not something that you change overnight. It's something that needs to be discussed in more depth, but with a focused group. It's not something to discuss with each and every one, because you want to do that with the entrepreneurs and the users who are really operating with foils in lock. So actually the next step for us would have been to start that up. You're welcome. More questions? No? Then I'm going to thank you all for coming here today. We really value all the support that is given by you to our organization. And we also love to see the room full, so come back next time. I'm going to thank Kelly for her wonderful presentation, Roxanne as well. And I hope to see you all back here. We have drinks, snacks, so don't leave us yet. Let's informally chat some more and hope to see you again next time in June 6th, I thought. Thanks.